What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And an interesting development today at the top of the 2025 NFL Draft order. Now, if you guys didn't see it, trending news out of Tennessee this morning, the Titans had their introductory press conference for new general manager Mike Borgonzi, who they hired from the Kansas City Chiefs. And at that intro press conference, here's the quote that their president of football ops, Chad Brinker, dropped, saying, quote, "We won't pass on a generational talent with the first pick in the NFL draft," end quote. So that's what we want to discuss today, because that clearly is a signal from the Titans that quarterback is not necessarily the end-all be-all for them with the first overall pick. They are very much open to taking BPA, going BPA and taking, maybe that's Abdul Carter that they've used as generational talent. Maybe it's Travis Hunter. Who knows? That's what we will discuss, and we will discuss what that means for the New York Giants picking number 3 overall in the draft, because obviously over the last several weeks, we've started diving into some of those mid-round quarterback prospects because we thought, well, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, probably going 1 and 2. Giants won't be able to draft those guys, so let's look at some of those other options for them. But this news right here coming out of Tennessee opens the door for the New York Giants to possibly land either a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders, which is obviously exciting news for us because we want to see the New York Giants land a franchise quarterback. And with those guys being the top 2 ranked quarterbacks in this class, the consensus is those two have the best chance of becoming a franchise quarterback out of anyone else in this draft class. So we're going to go ahead and react to it, discuss what it means for the New York Giants, and really dive in and give our takes. And again, the Tennessee Titans really do kind of determine what happens in this draft all the way through that first round. What they do at number 1 overall, it's not necessarily like it was last year. We all knew the Bears were going to take Caleb Williams all the way in January. Not the same case here for the Titans. This is going to be a very interesting draft and very interesting draft season, and we're really excited to continue to do those live film breakdowns and dive into all of these prospects right here on the channel. Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? What is your reaction to this news coming out of the Tennessee Titans?
I mean, listen, this is a pretty interesting piece of information to consider because when Rand Carthen was the GM like a month ago, he was apparently, reportedly, we were seeing reports that he loved Cam Ward. And if that was the case, they were going to take Cam Ward. They had the first overall pick. They had no reason to hide what they were going to do. Anthony, you said before we started recording, they could be trying to bluff and kind of make some signals that they are willing to trade, they're willing to move if another team is willing to move up. So maybe they are trying to gather some information, see how people respond to this type of information internally. But listen, BPA in this draft class is not a bad move. Cam Ward is not a generational talent. Shedeur Sanders, not a generational talent. But Abdul Carter might be, and Travis Hunter might be. You know, I wouldn't label them generational per se, Anthony, but I'd label them blue chip prospects. And I think in most draft classes, they'd be top 10 picks. So, with that being said, those are the guys you're looking at and saying, if you're the Titans, you have a new GM, and they don't want to force a quarterback they don't think is worth that pick. Maybe they still have conviction in Will Levis. Maybe they like a bridge. Maybe they like somebody else, a veteran. They spent a lot of money last year, so maybe they're looking at a free agent quarterback that can help them kind of be competitive now as they continue to rebuild and kind of restructure that roster for the most part. Maybe that is something they're considering doing. Maybe they want a Travis Hunter pair with Calvin Ridley. Maybe they want an Abdul Carter on that defensive front and really give them one of the best defenses in the game alongside L'Jarius Sneed and, pretty decent defense on paper. I know they got kind of carved up at times this year, but that team was just dead from the start. But with that being said, going BPA for the Titans, if that's something they're really considering, it opens up the draft for the Giants. Now, we do think that Sanders will be there at 3 no matter what. At least I think that. I do believe that Sanders probably will be available at 3. Cam Ward may or may not be. Right now, the chances are still very slim, but the Titans were the team I was the most worried about, right? The Browns, yeah, like their situation is interesting because Deshaun Watson just retore his Achilles. They need a quarterback. They got a lot of money tied up in Deshaun Watson, so like they kind of have to bring that price down. I can't really see them spending more at the quarterback position, but maybe they prefer to go BPA, keep building that roster up, and then take a guy like a Dart in the second round or a Jalen Milroe in the second round and just try to really build around and build an offense and situate an offense with a really high upside player like that. So, Anthony, when looking at this draft class, what is your perspective on the Titans and what they need and what they could do in BPA and maybe a team that might be looking to trade up? The problem with trading back for the Titans is they miss out on all the blue chip prospects. There's only like 2 or 3 in this draft class. So, if you trade back to 6 with the Raiders, you kind of skip out on all the generational blue chip prospects, as the new GM would say. So I don't think that's in their cards unless they're getting a stupid haul. And I don't think they're going to get I don't think anyone wants to spend a stupid haul to get a Cam Ward in this draft class. It's possible they could. I just don't see this as like a Daniels or Drake May situation where someone's willing to really just give up the farm for him. That's just my perspective. I could be wrong. But also the Browns, like, do you think that they're positioned to take a quarterback? Or do you think maybe going BPA and then a QB in the second round? Because, some of these analysts are saying maybe that gap between the round 2 quarterbacks and the round 1 quarterbacks isn't that big. That's what we're seeing from some analysts that they're saying. And that's an interesting talking point, interesting conversation to have. So there's a lot of information going on right now. I really don't know what this draft is going to shake out to be. But right now, the quarterbacks, like, are they good enough to be in the top 3? Yeah, because they're quarterbacks, but I could also see them dropping to where the Giants are and maybe getting a little lucky there.
Yeah, so you said a whole lot there, and there's a lot for me to respond to, and I'm going to try my best to remember every point that you made and either counter it or agree with it. One of the things that you said, you felt like Shedeur Sanders was definitely going to be there at number 3 no matter what. I'm not convinced about that fully, because I think there was definitely an avenue and still is an avenue for the Tennessee Titans to draft Shedeur Sanders. I think that Sanders Dion has kind of made it clear that there are certain teams he won't let Shedeur play for. That's true. I think that's more of an indication he doesn't want him to go die in Cleveland, right? Because that's where all players just go and they die. Like, the list of quarterbacks that have just been recycled through for the Cleveland Browns over the last 20 years is just, it's a laundry list. It's ridiculous. So I would think that if Dion wanted to prevent him from going anywhere, it would be Cleveland. However, I do think that with Brian Callahan as the coach of the Tennessee Titans, he's an offensive mind. He's a coach who really wants to develop a young rookie quarterback. I think that Dion could see an opportunity there for Shedeur Sanders and allow him to be the number 1 overall pick. And in fact, I think he really wants Shedeur to be the number 1 overall pick. So I don't necessarily think it's a guarantee that Shedeur would be on the clock for the Giants or on the board for the Giants when they're on the clock at number 3. I still think he could go number 1 overall, and I always have thought that, though I do think he has a higher chance of landing to the Giants at 3, because I think that Cam Ward, if he doesn't go 1, he will go 2, because the Cleveland Browns are terrible and they do need a quarterback, and Cam Ward doesn't have a Deion Sanders to step in and prevent him from being drafted by Cleveland. So I think that's an important note. And to another point that you made about potential bluffing from the Tennessee Titans, right? Could they be bluffing with this news here that they're going to go generational talent with the number 1 overall pick? And then you mentioned the potential trade scenario, right? Where they could be bluffing in order to attract potential suitors. But you said something very interesting there, Alex. You said that dropping all the way down to, say, number 6, right? If the Las Vegas Raiders wanted to trade up to 1st overall to take Shedeur Sanders or something, and the Titans were dropping all the way down to number 6, that wouldn't make a lot of sense for them because they're going to lose out on all the blue chip prospects, right? Well, if they drop down to number 3, they don't lose out on those blue chip prospects. They still would probably be able to get a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter. So the way that I most interpret this quote and the way that I think it should be looked at for Giants fans and why it's so important to Giants fans, this to me didn't necessarily open the door for the Titans to draft Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. This more than anything opened the door for the New York Giants to trade up to the 1st overall selection. The fact that they want to walk away from this draft within a generational talent is what they said, and they're picking number 1. The Giants are picking number 3. The Giants want their pick of the quarterback. They want to make sure that they get their guy, and they don't want the Cleveland Browns to throw a wrench in those plans. So let's say prior to the draft, Alex, we hear Giants are in love with Cam Ward. However, the Browns are also in love with Cam Ward. Well, if the Titans aren't in love with Cam Ward, that's the move. The Giants move up to 1. The Titans move down to 3. Titans still land their generational, as they believe, prospect in a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter. And the Browns have to settle with one of those 2 because they're not going to be able to land a Shedeur potentially. So that's the real takeaway for me from this, Alex. And I want to get your take on that as well. The fact that the Titans have not only opened the door to go BPA, but I agree with you. I don't think they opened the door to trading all the way down to 6 because they'll lose out on those blue chip prospects. But they absolutely did open the door, in my opinion, to trading down to number 3 and allowing the New York Giants to jump the Cleveland Browns and take their quarterback if the Titans don't want to draft one.
That's totally possible. And if you're the Titans, that's actually the best case scenario. Like, the best possible thing that could happen for you is that the Giants say, I want to leapfrog the Browns to get the quarterback of my choice. Because now you end up with either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter and probably a 1st round pick for 2026. I don't see a world where the Giants do that. And the reason I say that is because Joe Shane just said he's not going to mortgage the future for anybody. And if he does, and he will fail most likely with the schedule next year and the fact that these quarterbacks are not that great in context with previous draft classes, their probability of being franchise quarterbacks is still lower than what we saw last year. And I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I do think it's certainly possible, but making that risk, gambling the future, I don't even think John Mara would let them do it. To be quite honest with you, Anthony, I think John Mara would step in the way and say, I'm not letting you guys trade our 2026 first round pick without, with you guys on the hot seat and mortgaging our future. I know you think that he won't get in the way, but I actually think he would in that instance.
Why?
Because neither of these guys are worth taking that high in this draft at first overall. And trading your future for it.
Says Alex. Maybe not says Joe Shane, the guy who he's paying to make that decision.
Make catastrophic mistakes every time at quarterback.
But he's still retaining him, so clearly he still believes in him.
Right, but mortgaging the future to make a decision on the hot seat is just that would set us back years if he didn't pan out.
John Mara isn't viewing this as he only has 1 year left. He has 2 years on his contract. That's how John Mara is going to operate.
That's not what he said, though.
Shane has 2 years on his contract.
That's not what he said, though. What he said verbatim was, I better have more confidence in this team next year. That's basically a threat.
Yeah, basically. It wasn't a threat. He's not saying that if we don't have a franchise quarterback or if we don't have a future first-round pick that Joe Shane's going to be fired. He's only retaining him because he wants to see this rebuild through. So I don't think he's going to prevent him from making the decision. If Joe Shane sits John Mara down and says, I think that Cam Ward is going to be an all-pro in year one, the same effect as Jaden Daniels, why the fuck would John Mara prevent him from going after that player?
I don't think he would ever say that, though, because that's just not true.
Maybe he believes that.
If he believes that, he's a worse talent evaluator than we thought.
Why? Because maybe he's right. He could be right. A lot of people thought Jaden Daniels wasn't. Nobody thought Jaden Daniels was going to do in year one what he's done.
Sure, that's true.
Except for the guys inside of the Washington Commanders building. So
I don't even know if they thought that. He's been freaking insane.
Probably not doing what he's doing, but even still, if Joe Shane has a conviction, I don't think John Mara is going to prevent him from getting a potential franchise quarterback. We saw this on Hard Knocks last year. They talked about trading up to the number 3 pick, and John Mara said it would make him uneasy, but they did it in 2004 and it worked, and he won't stop them from doing it again. He said that in Hard Knocks this past offseason. Why would he step in the way this offseason? That doesn't make sense to me.
I think because these guys, the GM is on the hot seat right now.
So was Ernie Accorsi when he made the trade for Eli Manning.
But we're talking about 2 different calibers of prospects at the time, in context of the time period.
But yeah, sure, but maybe not in the eyes of the guys inside the Giants building. And from what we know, the Giants have been doing work on Shedeur Sanders since last year, had him as a prospect on their board in 2024 that they wanted to draft in round 2 or 3. Now he's a potential first overall pick. They might view him as an Eli Manning level prospect.
If they do, it's possible. I'm not going to say it's not impossible, but if they do, and they're willing to mortgage a much better 2026 draft class on paper for now, obviously a lot of things can happen, but if they're willing to mortgage our future based on that, and then Joe Shane gets it wrong, gets fired, John Mara will have set this team back 5 years with that decision.
Yeah, he's done that several times, and this is why I advocated for the firing of Joe Shane, obviously.
Right.
But listen, I don't think that John Mara is going to prevent them from trying to get a franchise quarterback. The number one thing that he said, I know you said, you make a good point. He said he needs to be in a better spot next year. He's running out of patience, right? All those things. But he also said the number one thing they have to do is find the quarterback.
Right,
so if that was his public statement, John Mara's public statement, we got to get a quarterback, he's not going to prevent Joe Shane from getting that quarterback, in my opinion.
I think the evaluations, what I will say is this. I'll ask you this straight up, and you guys in the comment section as well. Do you think that Cam Ward, based on your analysis, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are even close to the level of top 3 prospects you saw in last year's draft class?
No, I don't think that. I don't. But it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what Joe Shane thinks. Joe Shane has clearly been in love with him since last year, and if he's still in love with him, and he's even more in love with him now, he might view Shedeur Sanders as the number 1 pick in the draft.
And I think that's egregious. I think just not based on your perspective, based on the fact of just general what we've seen, what other analysts are saying, it would be egregious to trade our future for one of these 2 quarterbacks. I'm saying not from Joe Shane's, from your perspective, not from Joe Shane's, but just from what you think.
It would hurt to do, and I don't want to sacrifice the 2026 first round pick, especially because I think this team is not going to be good in 2025, and I think it's going to be a high pick. But if I boil it down to brass tacks, and if I truly believe Shador
Do
or
you
Cam
though?
is a franchise quarterback, I don't know yet. I honestly, I think there's the chances of them becoming a franchise quarterback, to me, are not as high as they were for Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and Drake May. I think they had
Hmm.
a higher chance. But just because the chance is lower doesn't mean that there's no chance. And if
Sure.
there is a chance, then you can make the argument for sacrificing the 2026 first round pick. Because when the Chiefs traded away their 2028 or 2018 first round pick, they don't give a shit about that because it breeded Patrick
Sure.
Mahomes in Super Bowls. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? And
Yep.
if you think you get a franchise quarterback, you get rid of that first round pick and you that's the trade. Franchise quarterbacks are priceless. Like every offseason, people are like, "Oh, trade for Justin Herbert, trade for Josh Allen." Never going to happen because those guys are priceless. It would be literally 10 first round picks and even then, the team probably says no because you just can't get rid of a franchise quarterback. So
Hmm.
that additional first that you're giving up, if he's a franchise quarterback, it's fine. But here's the counter argument to your point. This is going to support your argument. What if he's just Bryce Young? Okay, then you're in the situation that the Panthers are in,
Yeah.
and you have to fire your GM like they did, and you have to go into the following draft with no first round pick and try and force it to work with your quarterback. So that, to your point, is the concern here. But that's not going to be the concern to John Mara, in my opinion. I don't think that he's going to look at the Panthers and say, "Oh, I don't want to be the Panthers." He's worse than the Panthers. The Giants are a worse
They
organization right
are.
now.
They
So
are.
whatever Joe Shane, if he's giving him this job, he's telling him he can keep his job. Whatever he wants to do, I don't think he's going to stand in the way of letting him do.
I think that's a fair argument. I think if I were John Mara, I would stand in the way of mortgaging our future based on the information available, our schedule next year. Like you said, we're going to be a bad team next year, most likely. There's a pretty good chance we're not going to win more than 5 games. And if that's the case, we need that first overall pick. We need that first round pick because that draft class, and I think this supports your argument pretty much all offseason. I'm okay going back to back quarterbacks in consecutive draft classes. If you draft a guy this year, you stay at 3, you take a guy, or you take one in the second round, and you are a bad football team, which is most likely going to be the case, and you run it back in 2026 and you get a quarterback, or you maybe want to mortgage your future on a better prospect. I like that plan more than trading the farm for one this year. I think that's kind of where I stand. But again, you just don't know if one's going to fall to 3. That's the major concern. Is there going to be that guy there? But if you walk away with Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter and a Jackson Dart, I still think I'm happy with that plan. That's been kind of my stance. It's like I'm cool with that too. We're going to do more information. We're going to do more analysis on Jackson Dart because I still haven't really rounded out my perspective on him just yet. So I'll get back to that take in a couple of days once we do that. But I think for now, like you walk away with one of the best prospects. If you walk away with the best prospect in this draft class at 3, you're probably happy. And then you get a Jackson Dart and a bridge like a Russell or somebody else. Like I could live with that until 2026.
So let's go through a hypothetical. If the New
Okay.
York Giants in 2024 had traded their 2025 first round pick, moved up to
Yes.
number 3, and drafted Drake May,
Mm-hmm.
would you be happy right now? Would you feel like the team is in a good situation if they had Drake May, no Malik Neighbors, and did not have their number 3 overall pick this year? Assuming
didn't
they
have it.
still picked top 3 because the Patriots are picking number 4 with Drake May, so it didn't
Mm-hmm.
change anything for them. Let's assume the Giants pulled off that trade last year, but they didn't have their number 3 overall pick in this draft and it belonged to the Patriots instead. Would you feel like the team was in a good position?
I think that after watching Drake May this year and some of the throws he made, I'd be fine with it. I'd be fine with it just because the financial implications, you have a lot of money in the future and whatnot. I'd be okay with it, but I do think that Drake May was a better prospect,
Sure.
and you do
Yes,
too.
he was. But that is the argument that Joe Shane is going to make to John Mara. He's going to say, I think that
Sure.
this guy, I was willing to trade for Drake May last year, really wanted him. I think that Shador Sanders is also worth trading for. The Patriots are going to be fine. Everybody likes where they're at. So let's go ahead and make the trade this time around. That's what I think Joe Shane's thought process would be in this situation.
Just think about the from just a perspective of like a fan of if you executed that, or let's say like hypothetically they wanted to do that for Drake May was a better prospect, and then you try to sell John Mara on the same exact thing but for a worse prospect. It's just
Yeah.
like how many times can we shoot ourselves in the kneecap, man? How many times are we gonna do this crap? Like where it's like, oh, we couldn't get Drake May for what it's worth. Like obviously they didn't. Patriots were like, no, we're not trading that pick. But let's say they were. Maybe if they
People always
offered
say
more.
that, but the fact that the Patriots were even taking phone calls on that pick on draft night leads me to believe that there
How
was
high
a
can we get?
world where they could have traded down. Like
Right.
everybody says, oh, they were never going to trade down. They were talking to the Giants on the day of the draft, taking their phone calls. If that's the case, then there definitely was a price tag that they would have sold on It just was an astronomical price tag that the Giants weren't willing to pay. And you can argue that they should have been willing to pay. Maybe they wouldn't have the number 3 overall pick this year. Maybe they would have had to.
It was probably
trade
going to
that
take
away
multiple
and
firsts,
more.
realistically.
Probably 25 and 26
Which
firsts,
is
and that's
which
where
is
the Giants drew the line.
probably what I would. I probably wouldn't have, like, if I could turn back the clock. I think Drake May. I mean, it's hard to evaluate May right now because the Patriots were just such a poor roster. But I do think the tangible skills in some of his throws were like, okay, this guy could be a legit like superstar if they build a team correctly. So I mean, Mike Vrabel's a great coach for them. I think he's going to turn that thing around pretty fast. But I do think, like, it's tough. It really depends. It's too soon to say whether or not I would have done it for 2 first-round picks because I haven't seen enough of Drake May just yet. But I do think that it would definitely. I think you probably would. What would you say? You probably would have done it for 2 first-rounders?
Yeah, I said it back then, and I'll say it now. If you got a chance to get a franchise quarterback, you don't fuck around. You get that franchise quarterback, and that's how I think the Giants need to operate this offseason too.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I just don't think that this caliber of quarterback class is worth mortgaging our future, especially. And I think the context, the important context is, I don't think that Joe Schoen has 2 years left. I think that if he doesn't do a good job this year, they're gonna fire him after this upcoming season.
I agree with you. I don't think he has 2 years left either, but he thinks he has 2 years left, and John Mara is going to give him the benefit of the doubt and pretend like he has 2 years left. So it's
so tough,
his hot
dude,
seat
because
isn't going to change the way that they operate, and that's a problem in and of itself. The fact that his hot seat doesn't change anything is problematic.
It is a problematic situation. It is.
That's why they should have fired him. That's why we made those arguments. They needed to clean house in order to have a fresh set of eyes on this roster and a GM who didn't have his back against the wall. That's what we argued was necessary for the Giants. They don't have that. They have a GM who is standing on a thin piece of ice over a layer of lava, and he's trying to figure out how to make that ice get thicker. That's impossible. So that's where the Giants find themselves. That's why they should have fired Joe Schoen. This is a great conversation that just is ultimately summarized. The New York Giants should have made a change.
Backwards logic. It's backwards logic. And I think the most interesting thing that you said, and why this is coming to a spearhead right now, is the reason that I don't trust mortgaging the future, Joe Schoen mortgaging the future, is because one of the reasons the Giants didn't fire Joe Schoen, I personally believe this, and Anthony, I don't know, I'll get your take on this, is because they know if they would have fired him, they would have got the worst possible head coaching GM candidates in this class, maybe outside of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nobody would have wanted to come here, right? Like, we wouldn't have gotten Ben Johnson, we wouldn't have got Aaron Glenn, we wouldn't have got anyone worth a damn. So they decided, okay, 10 teams, guys, we're talking about 10 teams just turned their general manager and head coach over. That's like 40% of the NFL just turned their entire front offices over. The Giants would have been 11. They would have ended up not doing much better. So what I think they decided was, let's let them go through next year. Let's let them suffer through a gauntlet of a schedule, and then we're going to have very minimal teams to compete with for new GMs and new head coaches next year. And if I was John Mara and I'm letting him mortgage our future, our 2026 first round pick with the 90% chance they're gonna be fired, and like, John Mara's not an idiot. I know he knows, like, this is a really tall hill for those guys to climb. The chances of them succeeding and pulling it off are probably less than 30%, less than 25%. That's my perspective, but I'll let you get your take in a second. What I think is letting them mortgage their future kills any chance of getting a better GM or head coach candidate next year. Kills it. There's no chance. You can't fire him. Joe Schoen trading up actually probably saves his job because the Giants now have no leverage to give to a new GM and head coach. And from a perspective of Joe Schoen, yeah, he probably does want to trade up and get rid of those picks. But that's why I'm John Mara. I'm not letting him freaking do it, because I know that probably protects himself from getting fired in the future. And that's almost like tanking, dude. It's almost like purposeful tanking. That's the same logic, It's that type of stuff would piss me off personally.
But Mara's not going to view it that way. He's not going to.
Oh God, that's why we're here.
It is. He's a short-sighted owner, and he keeps employing short-sighted general managers. That's what we're dealing with. This general manager that we have right now, Joe Schoen, does not have the wherewithal to see into 2027 right now. All of his focus is devoted on 2025, and that's a problem. Any general manager that is only devoted on one singular season is a bad general manager. Unless you're talking about Howie Roseman with the Eagles, who was looking at the one piece of the puzzle to fit in there and try and make them a Super Bowl contender this upcoming year, and that was Saquon Barkley. That is when you need to focus on 1 year, when you think that 1 year can be a Super Bowl contending year. The Giants are not Super Bowl contenders this year. They should not be focusing solely on 2025 because that is not going to be their year. Like, look at the division, look at the conference, look at the league. The Giants are so far off from the top of it. So the fact that we have a GM who basically needs to put all of his chips in for this season, a probable losing season, tells you everything that you need to know about the direction of this franchise. They're short-sighted. They can't build for the long term, and this is becoming too negative, and I'm not trying to make it negative. I'm just trying to walk through the facts that the Giants, yeah, they might luck into their franchise quarterback at number 3 overall now, but if they do try to trade up to number 1, because that seems to be one of the things that's open by this quote, I don't know how that's going to shake out with the fan base. I think there's going to be a lot of very upset people.
Oh yeah, well, because it's either they strike gold on a franchise quarterback, or we're actually cooked for the next half a decade. Like, that's what a decision of that magnitude holds that much weight. You know what I mean? Like, either Sanders or Ward becomes that guy, or we just traded our future next year and our ability to move on from our GM and head coach. If they fail, we are not going to be bottom of the barrel. Like, we can't even attract good candidates here. It's like literally kamikazing this organization into the ground. You know, like, they have a chance to get the quarterback. They need to get lucky at 3. They really need to get lucky at 3 and have the guy they want there. But trading up and mortgaging our future, man, it's literally kamikaze. Like, you don't, like, the chances of any quarterback succeeding is extraordinarily low, especially when you have a situation like ours. And these two quarterbacks in Cam Ward and Sanders need to be in a good situation for them to succeed. That's the type of prospects they are. They're not going to walk in and be elite. They got to be in a good, stable situation. The Giants are not stable right now, right? So, like, I don't give them the benefit of the doubt. They're gonna make it work. So mortgaging our future on a low probability decision just for them to save their jobs, holy hell, that would scare the crap out of me. And the rest of you guys would probably agree, like, oh, like, they better get this right. Like, they better get this right. And that's just the truth, you know? So
that's how we feel regardless, though.
Absolutely.
They have to get it right.
They have to.
You said it holds weight, and you're right, it does, if the Giants trade that future first. Because to me, listen, like, I have a different mindset. A lot of fans are going to say if you draft a quarterback, you have to give them 3 years. I don't feel that way. I think that if the Giants draft Shador or Cam at number 3 overall, they finish with the first overall pick next year, and there's a quarterback who's head and shoulders better, you take that quarterback.
Yep.
That's how I personally feel about it. A lot of fans don't agree with that, though. A lot of them feel you take that number 1 pick and you trade down and you pile assets and build around the quarterback you drafted, or you draft a blue chip prospect to help build around the quarterback you drafted the year prior. I don't feel that way. If there is a quarterback there who is a bona fide future All-Pro, I'm taking that guy over the quarterback that we drafted the year prior and then still finish with the number 1 overall pick with. Because clearly he wasn't that difference maker. And yeah, maybe he will be eventually. But again, if you're comparing prospects, but that's just my mindset. But a lot of people don't feel that way. But that's not even an option if they trade up. So that's the argument here.
I'll pile on top of that argument in your favor. We have people in our fan base, including yourself, Anthony, who are willing to trade third for JJ McCarthy right now. Sanders or Ward will fetch a late first-round pick next year if they want to go in that direction.
All right, don't say including me. I said that I would not trade the number 3 pick. I would trade the second round pick.
Second round pick. Okay, so sorry. There are people in our fan base, though, that would trade the 3rd overall pick for JJ McCarthy. Apologies, I did not. I thought you had said that. Second round pick. Even so, though, if you walked away next year and you traded Cam or Sanders for a second round pick and you got your all-pro future quarterback and now you have 2 second-round picks next year to get I'm freaking cool with that, though. Like, that's fine with me if you have conviction in a player like that.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind, when the Cardinals traded away Josh Rosen, they got a second-round pick for him. He had a historically bad rookie season.
Yeah.
They still got a second-round pick for him. That's the value of quarterbacks on rookie contracts who were bought into in the first round. So if the Giants take Cam Ward at number 3, and he's completely terrible as a rookie, they can still probably get a second-round pick for him the following year and take a better quarterback in the first round and then use those 2 second-round picks to build around him. That's the mindset that I would have about the quarterback that we take in 2025. I am not married to him for 5+ years like we were with Daniel Jones. As I've said before, it's good practice to take a quarterback in the top 10 if you think they have a chance of being a franchise quarterback. Taking Daniel Jones was fine practice. Forcing Daniel Jones upon coaches and trying to make him work for 6 years was bad practice. Moving on from him after 3 years, once you already knew what he was, would have been good practice. That's the argument that I've always made and will continue to make. Now, with the McCarthy thing, I think that's interesting because again, if we're talking about caliber of prospects from last year versus this year, which has been a big part of this discussion, McCarthy has a higher grade, according to most scouts and analysts, has a higher grade last year than Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders does this year. However, the reason that I wouldn't trade the number 3 pick for him or any first-round pick for him is because of his contract. The value of taking a quarterback in the first round is getting that fifth-year option. That is of the utmost importance. That's why guys like Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe, you can't say that they won't go in the first round. A team might take them at 32, 31, 30, somewhere in that range in order to get that fifth-year option. You don't trade a first-round pick for a quarterback coming off of a knee injury who does not have 5 years on his deal. He already lost his rookie season. He's only got 3 years on his contract. That contract of 3 years is not worth the number 3 overall pick, in my opinion. So that's why I wouldn't trade for McCarthy, even though I love McCarthy, and I think he is a better quarterback than the other 2 prospects that we're talking about. But I wouldn't trade the number 3 pick for a guy with only 3 years on his contract. That would be the clarification argument that I would make on that one. However, I do think that we need to keep in mind, yeah, we talked a lot about the trade and the potential trade that could come of this quote from the Titans. The Titans could just take the quarterback. Maybe they view Cam Ward as generational. That's possible. Or let's say that they do take Carter. And let's say that the Browns then take Cam Ward. Let's say it goes Carter, Cam Ward, and the Giants are on the board at number 3, Alex. Let's walk it through. Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter? Which one are you taking? I want to know.
It's tough. Honestly, it's a
early,
freaking.
So
it's a
you're
tough
not married
decision.
to this answer. You might change your mind, but I do want to know what your early answer is.
I think after I see more Jackson Dart, I will have a better answer for this. But right now, I think that the Giants will take Sanders if he's there at 3, because I think that he offers them a plug-and-play rookie quarterback that can operate at an NFL level in an NFL system. And he will be able to help maximize Neighbors early because of his accuracy on short passes. And Neighbors did a lot of his work after the catch. So, and his touch on the deep ball is great, and the fade routes will be great for Neighbors. Will love Sanders and his qualities, I think. So I do think that the Giants would take Sanders, but I gotta see a little bit more Dart before I have an answer on myself in this. I mean, I could see them going Sanders and then trying for a Dart in the second, but it's interesting. It's a tough one. That's a really tough question, honestly. Not totally sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would go with Shedeur, but that's because I'm dying to get a quarterback. You know, like if
I'd be on board with it. I would support that decision if they did that. If they went with Sanders at 3.
Yeah, and a big part of the reason why I'm dying to get a quarterback is because I'm fine drafting first-round quarterbacks back to back. So, a lot of Giants fans
I'll quote that too. Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of Giants fans want to wait for the right quarterback. I'll draft the quarterback, and if I don't think he's the right quarterback, I will hope that I'm wrong. Especially if you're Joe Shane, because you've been wrong about just about everything.
Every quarterback.
Take the quarterback, and even if you're not 100% convinced he's going to be a franchise quarterback, even if you think he might not be, take him anyway, because you're probably wrong about him. So he probably will be a franchise quarterback if you think he won't be. Plus, bank on Brian Dable, dude. Like, that's been the whole thing that we've heard from Joe Shane and Brian Dable since they've been here. Oh, the quarterback guru, he's going to turn everybody into Josh Allen. He's turned nobody into Josh Allen. But, you know, if you're going to stick to your guns here, take the quarterback and give him a young talent to mold, and hopefully he does figure it out with this one.
Priority number 1 for me in free agency, get the best possible offensive lineman that will come here. Best possible guard. I don't think Chase Smith will come here personally because I don't think he wants to come to a losing organization.
Why would
unless they overpay
Chiefs,
him?
Right? Like,
that's what I'm saying. There's no reason. You got to go and try to convince the best possible guard to come to the Giants, and then you draft a quarterback and you and then a receiver in the second round. And you put them in a spot where that young player has the best chance of succeeding. That is the only way Joe Shane and Brian Dable can save their jobs, in my opinion.
Yeah. You want to know another reason? People don't talk about this enough. We think that the Giants always overpay on free agents, right? We always say that. Part of it is because they're a really bad team usually, right? So they have to pay. Also, part of it, you remember when Tyreek Hill had his choice between the Jets and the Dolphins? Do you remember why he chose the Dolphins?
Like weather?
Income
Probably.
tax.
Oh,
Income tax.
Yeah, let's go.
The Giants have to pay a premium in order to convince these teams or these players to come here versus Florida versus Texas. Income tax matters, and the Giants
They still end up paying the jockey
Trey
tax,
Smith,
though. But you're right. They still end up paying a jockey tax, but it's minimal compared to their actual
But for Trey Smith, I mean, they're going to have to pay him several million over if the Dolphins wanted to pay him or if the Buccaneers wanted to pay him. Also, keep in mind, the Dolphins and Buccaneers are significantly better teams. The Giants have to pay a premium, like a motherfucking premium, to sign any of these offensive linemen. It's tough. But I will just say, I disagree with you. Like, yes, pay up for an offensive lineman this offseason. Number one priority for me in free agency, pay up for a bridge quarterback.
That too.
The best bridge possible.
It sucks, man. That $20 million that DJ is eating into our freaking cap space right now is actually like catastrophic. Catastrophic. because that means every contract we sign is going to have to be pushed. We're going to have $30 million to spend, right? We have $42 million. We need $10 million for the draft class. $30 million buys you a bunch of peanuts in today's NFL. Like it sucks. Like the reality
might just be the one bridge
I
quarterback.
know, literally. Like that's how tough it
even
is.
if the Giants sign a quarterback to a 1-year bridge deal, Alex, let's say that Russell Wilson's market value, whether fans want to admit it or not, is like $30 million. Baker Mayfield makes $30 million per year, 33. Russell Wilson's going to get $30 million. Let's say the Giants wanted Russell Wilson to be their bridge for a year. You're going to have to pay him in a contract. Alex, think about how messed up this is. They would have to pay him that 1-year contract, but they're going to have to pay him across 3 years with void years at the end of it because they can't afford to pay him all in the first year. So they can't give him the 1-year $30 million contract and just call it a day. And they'd have to pay him the 1-year contract, but they have to spread the money in void years across 3 to 4 years and just have this money hanging on their books for a quarterback that's no longer playing for them for 3 years later. It's a fucked up situation.
You want to know who I would sign as a veteran that can just come in and play? I don't know his injury situation.
I'm very afraid to hear who you're going to say.
I was going to say Zach Martin.
Oh, I thought you were talking about quarterbacks.
Oh, no, sorry. Offensive guard.
Texas versus New York.
True. I mean, but Zach Martin's 34. He played 600 snaps this year. He's been a little bit inconsistent, but he's still very good. And I would absolutely sign him to be a right guard for us at probably a reasonable deal, probably like a 1-year deal at his age.
I mean, he's a future Hall of Famer, but I just can't see a world where he wants
help you
to,
galvanize
at the end of his career, the twilight of his career, those players at the end of the career
they want to go win
teams.
Super Bowls for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Rings.
I mean, Brandon Scherf, another veteran, he probably will go to a better team. Austin Corbett, Kevin Zeitler, bring the Zeit man back, dude. Bring freaking Kevin back. I begged the Giants to sign him last offseason. You know what we did?
Yeah, but
nothing.
Guy played for the Ravens and the Lions. He's ring chasing, dude. He hasn't gotten one. He's going to keep chasing.
Chase it here. We could bring back Will Hernandez, who's actually pretty good.
Yes, that I'd be cool with because I think that he would probably just be looking for the paycheck, so he might come back to the Giants. You want to know a name? I'm going to throw this name out there. This one's out of the box. I actually wrote an article about this morning. I don't know if you saw that. Jedrick Wills. He was the 10th overall pick in 2020. True. He was a right tackle coming out of Alabama. The Browns moved him to left tackle. He has been terrible for 5 years and often injured. His projected market value is a 1-year, $3 million deal. And if anybody thinks, don't sign Jedrick Wills, it's a 1-year, $3 million deal potentially. Sign him to that and see if he's a better player in a new environment.
You know who I also like?
Probably not, because it's the Giants and this is a shitty environment. But he played left tackle his whole time with the Browns.
Yep.
He was a dominant right tackle at Alabama. Throw him at right tackle. Throw Evan Neal at guard. Maybe even throw Wills at guard. Just find out where he fits. I don't know. For a 1-year, $3 million deal on a former first-round pick, I think it's worth a flyer. It's a low-risk, high-upside move. That's just one I'm going to throw out there.
I like that one. I also like Dalton Risner a lot. He won $2.4 million deal. 29 years old. Dalton Risner, the Rizzler, second-round pick. The Dalton Risler, man, he had a pretty good year. He was a really good pass blocker this year, decent run blocker, and we need to pass protection. Whoever our quarterback is, probably Sanders. If we're going for someone at 3.
We've been talking about the Giants and why they need to sign Dalton Risner for like 3 offseasons.
I know, and he's good every year. I don't understand why the Giants just don't make easy freaking decisions. 1 year, $2.5 million. He had a substantially better year than Greg Van Roten, and I like Van Roten. I like him as a depth option. Always did.
Sure.
But not as a freaking starter. Can we stop putting depth guys in as starting positions? Like Evan Neal, let him develop as a guard, but there's no freaking way I'm using him as a starter next year.
No, we can't stop signing depth players as starters. Why? Because we have the Daniel Jones contract still on the fucking books.
That's Dalton Risner you're paying as basically paying him depth money to be actually a decent starter. I don't know why anyone doesn't want to give him a freaking deal, but we'll take advantage of it. I mean, he started like half the season for the Vikings and was excellent in pass pro. So
yeah, he gets that money, or he gets that bargain contract though because he's always coming off of injuries.
Right.
Which the Giants need to start targeting some of these guys coming off of injuries to play some decent snaps for them.
Because we can't pay for the best guys anymore. We can't keep paying top dollar to supplement weaknesses. But yeah, I mean, listen, this is we're gonna go through free agency. We got it coming up in a couple weeks here, and God knows we got names on the freaking books, dude. We got so many players that we like, and I think Anthony, looking at the amount of money that we do have, we should walk through an entire plan to address key positions. We'll walk through it million by million where we would allocate the money to fix. I don't even want to say fix the Giants. Help the Giants in 2025. Like, where can we throw some money at underrated free agents that can help us be competitive next season? That is my goal in free agency. We're not going to pay top dollar for DJ Reed. We're not going to pay top dollar for Charvarius Ward. We're not going to pay top dollar for Trey Smith because, again, you're going to have to backload these contracts to years 2 and 3. And new GM, imagine a new GM coming in with all these contracts backloaded and having no 2026 first round pick. Kamikaze.
Hey, yeah, you're not wrong, but to be fair, Joe Shane did inherit a similar situation. He had his first round pick. In fact, he had two first round picks. Fucking Dave Gettleman's parting gift. He
blundered him.
He gave Joe Shane 2 first round picks. Joe Shane fucked up both of them.
Dude, that was when we had an advantageous position where the guys wanted to come here.
Oh my God.
Joe Shane's giving booty cheeks to the next GM. Unless he hits on this quarterback, which
they had
then in that case,
all of the assets in the world in that 2022 offseason.
Except for some money.
The fact, I know, but still, the fact that they're not a better team than they were in 2022 is actually appalling. How is that possible considering they had those 2 first? I don't know. Whatever. It is what it is. Again, at the time, we loved the Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau picks. Maybe they are good players. Maybe they've just been poorly developed. Who knows? We'll never be able to get to the bottom of it until the Giants give us access to the locker room. We can ask these tough questions. We'll get there one day. But it's going to be a rocky road. This was definitely an interesting conversation. It took a very, very intriguing turn that I didn't anticipate, Alex. We got a really good back and forth in there, as we love when that happens. So definitely curious to hear everyone else's thoughts down below on the wide array of topics that we discussed in this episode, and whether or not you guys are buying the Titans' plea that they're going to take a generational prospect at number 1. If that's the case, I mean, Alex, let's wrap it up though. Who are the generational prospects potentially? I know you said you don't think there are any. Maybe it's just blue chip guys, whatever. If you had to guess who the Titans are talking about, I think they're talking about Travis Hunter. Okay, so Travis Hunter. Yep. You're muted, or you don't know you're muted. Okay.
Apologies, I did not know I was muted, but yes. I do agree it is Travis Hunter, and the reason I think that, Abdul Carter, awesome, but I don't think people were talking about him until this most recent playoff, and then they saw him do that. I wouldn't say they weren't talking about him. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but he wasn't like part of that first overall discussion until like 2 weeks ago. On the national media stage, I would say, maybe like on a smaller scale, he was being discussed in that range, but I do think he's getting that national attention now, but Hunter's the guy that I look at and say, this guy's ceiling is an elite receiver and an elite cornerback. You just don't find guys, and I know he's not going to play both positions, but he can do things on both sides of the ball in certain alignments and packages that he can be used as a utility piece that you just cannot find in the NFL. Imagine having a standout elite corner and you're in the fourth quarter of a drive and you need another playmaker on the field to cause havoc and you want to get crazy. Like I think Ben Johnson would do crazy things with Travis Hunter, but like imagine having that situation and suddenly you get to swap your elite corner onto the offensive side to add another elite playmaker onto your fourth quarter drive where you're trying to go win the football game after he just made a stop. We're going to see that in his career at some point, most likely. And that's freaking crazy. You just don't walk into prospects like that. That value is unprecedented. That's generational to me. I don't know. A lot of people think that he's not even the best receiver in this draft class. I think that's total bullshit. I think he's the best receiver in this draft class. And in terms of cornerback, you could go 1A, 1B with him and Will Johnson. You just don't find guys like this all the time.
Right. That's generational. So if you believe the things that you've said and that many analysts have said, then yeah, that fits the bill of generational. So I think that's who the Titans were talking about. I mean, listen, if you look at the recent history of the draft, Alex, I think like 13 of the last 14 first overall picks have been Heisman Trophy winners. So even that right there should tell you that Travis Hunter has the best chance of going number 1 overall. That's why I took my futures bet on him that I mentioned to you earlier. Like, he's the Heisman Trophy winner. He's got the highest chance, but the books don't reflect that for whatever reason. Go check out Fireside Bets as well, by the way, for more of that analysis. But I don't know. We'll see who ends up number 1. We'll see who ends up number 2. And then the Giants, we don't even know what they're going to do at number 3. Like, we're talking about all this, like what we think could happen, what they should do. We got to get through free agency first, see exactly what this roster looks like. So it's going to be really interesting. Going to be a fun offseason. As I keep saying, guys, make sure you stay tuned to Fireside Giants for all of this analysis and speculative content. It's going to be a lot of fun this offseason. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants, and make sure you give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify podcasts. We'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.